this mic down a little bit. Let's see. Make sure nothing behind me's showing some info. All right. Just gonna let a few more folks hop in here. Got another minute or so. All right, 11:30. 11:30 on a Monday. That must mean that it is time for another Medicare Made Simple episode. If you guys haven't been following along, I'm Brandon Gonzalez over here at PIA. We do these weekly, every Monday at 11:30. And today is going to be the episode about VA benefits for my military folks, guys and girls in the military, and coming out and wondering what to do after the fact. So as you can see here, we're going to go show you how the two systems work together. We're going to show you how Medicare and your VA benefits can work together, and the one decision that costs veterans for life. So I'll hop right into this here. All right. So first page here. Two separate systems. Most veterans should have both. VA care and Medicare don't pay together at the same time. Some people use VA at VA facilities and Medicare for care out in the community or in the civilian world, as they like to say it. So today, again, we're going over VA benefits and Medicare and how they can work together. So this line here, you obviously you have the VA for your VA facilities, your VA doctors, and for your medicines and stuff like that. And then obviously your VA is not going to work if you go outside of that community, right? So like if you go to civilian doctors, as they like to be called, you would need something other than VA, because that, civilian doctors, they wouldn't accept that. So that's how Medicare can kind of make things full circle for someone like that, and just make sure that you have your I's dotted and your T's crossed, because VA access isn't guaranteed to stay the same forever. Medicare is a safety net for you that's going to keep your choices open. So I know a lot of my VA retirees, they get really nervous because I think actually on the website it just says, this is who knows how long VA benefits are going to be a thing. They might be a thing for forever, but then again, they might not, right? So having both is just going to ensure that you're set both ways. You're set if all you use is VA, and you're set if you use a mixture of the two. And today we're just going to talk a little bit about that. So this is what each part means for a veteran. Obviously, these are the 4 parts to Medicare. We went over these in our very first episode. So if you're unfamiliar, I'm not going to spend a ton of time on it. So go back and watch that first video. But what this means for veterans. So for Part A, okay, you should take it. You should take Part A, number one, because it's free. There's no downside to taking Part A. You've already paid for it, right? So you should take Part A because that allows you to keep your options open. And it also, signing up for Medicare on time in general is going to keep those penalties away from you. So Part A, for someone who is a veteran and has VA benefits, you should take Part A. Part B, this says strongly consider, but we're going to talk about in this episode of why it's probably a little more than strongly consider. It's probably more of a take it as well. But Part B obviously opens your options to civilian doctors, and it just, protects you in some ways that the VA can't if you're using people outside of that community. So also going to protect you from a late penalty as well. So if you have the means to, I guess some people get caught up in, well, I only use the VA, so there's no reason for me to have Part B and pay that $203. Well, I mean, to each their own. But what if you're traveling somewhere, and there are no VA doctors available for you, or if it's some dire emergency, you just if you have the means to have Part B, then you should have Part B. You should always have Part B because it's just going to keep your options open. And you should also have Part B for a big reason that I'm going to speak about a little later in a couple of other slides. So Part A, Part B. Part A, definitely take it. Part B, strongly consider to take it. Part C is very, very optional. Now Part C is Medicare Advantage. That veterans can have a Part C to where it doesn't include drug coverage. Because you wouldn't need drug coverage, you would use the VA for your medicines. I would encourage you to use the VA for your meds, and if you wanted to, just take a Part C. I can't think of too many reasons why you would, but I mean, just give some extra benefits there. Um, Part D is going to be your drug plan, and for a lot of my veterans, they don't need a prescription drug plan, because VA benefits it counts as credible coverage. So you cannot take Part D because you have credible coverage, and you would not have a late you wouldn't have a late penalty for not taking your Part D, again because you had credible coverage with the VA. So moving on after this one. All right. So this is, this is where we're going to make our money here on this slide is if you have TRICARE for life, Part B is not optional. So VA benefits, you earn it through your service, right? Part B is recommended, but it's not required to keep your VA benefits. Okay. But if you have TRICARE, there's a couple different levels. But if you're eligible for TRICARE for life, then you cannot have TRICARE for life unless you have Part B. Okay. So for military retirees, it just TRICARE for life wraps around your Medicare. So Part B is mandatory for them. If you drop Part B or you never get Part B, if you drop it, then you lose your TRICARE for life. But if you don't get it, if you don't get Part B, then you can never have TRICARE for life. So those two work hand in hand, and you just have to have those. Moving on. All right. So this is what I was getting at earlier. Some people, you know, some people can be a little stubborn, and they're like, "Well, I would never use civilian doctors," and you just don't know that, right? So I'm not telling you that you have to take Part B. Now, in some scenarios, that is the case. So for the TRICARE for life scenario, that is the case. But for the regular everyday person that just has, TRICARE and those two levels of it, they don't necessarily have to take Part B, but it just opens more doors for you later. So that's why we say that. So here's the slide: declining Part B to save the premium. So I use the VA for everything. So why pay a Part B premium I don't need? Saying that, it kind of feels reasonable and it kind of makes a little bit of sense. So, but that's all the same things as to why it's dangerous. So this is what can happen. Your needs can change. You move, or VA access shifts. That's a big one. So it actually says on the VA website that you should take Part B for that instance, such as that, as the VA access shifting and it becoming less available. If you didn't have Part B at that time and you weren't able to go anywhere, there's no other insurance available for you, and you would have to take Part B late, and you would have that penalty that's never going to go away, and you're going to have limited enrollment windows. So there's just some scares, right? So why not head those up on the front end? Why don't you go ahead and take Part B, especially if you have the means to do so? If you can pay that $203 out of your Social Security check, or a bank account, then it's always better to have A and B in these scenarios. So here's another piece of advice here. Some people in the military retire before 65. You'll take your Part A as soon as you're eligible, right? But Part B you're not 65 yet. you want to wait a little bit, that's totally okay. Just get with one of us, and we can talk through it with you. But here, going back to what can happen, your needs change, you move, you're in a different service area, or VA access shifts, and now you need community care. And community care just means civilian doctors for people that are familiar in the space. Um, you know, all of those things. So, and there's that at the bottom. The VA itself recommends enrolling in Part B. All right, moving on. This is the ideal. This is the ideal setup for. All right, this is the ideal setup for a veteran that is turning 65. So, you want to take Part A at 65. It's free for nearly everyone who served and worked. No reason to skip it. Part B, you should strongly consider it. It protects against a lifetime penalty and just opens the door to civilian doctors if your needs change. You do not, you don't have to take a drug plan. You can use a VA for your prescriptions. So VA drug coverage is credible coverage, so they would not give you a penalty for not getting Part D. On the bottom here, if you have TRICARE or CHAMP VA, or TRICARE for Life, I should say, Part B is required. So for TRICARE for Life and CHAMP VA, Part B keeps your coverage working, and they just wrap together hand in hand. All right. So this should be the last slide here. I knew this would be a short episode. So, next steps, if you're in this scenario, or if you know someone that's in this scenario, let us help you map out your VA and Medicare together. You can bring your situation, your VA priority group, TRICARE, CHAMP VA, where you get care. We'll line up Medicare so you keep every benefit you've earned and never miss a penalty, or never have a penalty. So just comment veteran and we'll map your setup at no cost. Thank you.